You're in the Business Insurance Zone with me, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributor to Backroom Technician. This week on The Biz, the Disability Insurance for Individuals series and our tribute to Disability Awareness Month, May 2013. And on today's show, Designing Disability Insurance with Marcy Pruitt.
When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Well, welcome everyone to the Business Insurance Zone, and I'm your host, Steve Savant. And we're broadcasting to a nationwide audience of financial advisors right here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, home of America's largest fountain. And with us, day two, disability diva, expert in DI, Marcy Pruitt. Hey, Marcy.
Good to see you, Steve. Thank you.
Welcome back. And of course, if you didn't catch Marcy's show yesterday, it's the introduction. And it's a building block experience, a learning experience here on the Business Insurance Zone. So I want you to go back out to our archives and catch that show first. We kind of laid out some of the basics. We were giving away yesterday, and we'll give it away again, the Stat Pack, man, that DI Stat Pack is to die for. And it gives you the odds and the ideas of what are the numbers of getting disabled and so forth. And I'm always surprised how we think about term and we have to buy life insurance and everything else, and yet hardly anybody dies with a contract, and yet DI all the time. People are having issues, short-term, long-term.
Absolutely. And statistically, less than 2% of term policies result in a death benefit being paid. People don't realize that.
Right, I mean, people aren't dying, but they are getting disabled.
That's right.
Now, let's think about that for a second, because morbidity issues, whether it's LTC, medical, or in our case today, DI, we're looking at how are we going to design, and we're going to indemnify ourselves. If we want paycheck protection, which I do, right? I don't want to just have disability insurance. I want to sell paycheck protection. And when you see my tweets and blogs all next week, you're going to be seeing, wow, Steve's all over the thing with paycheck protection. When I'm looking at this, though, I want to design. And I'm with the premier architect of all that is DI with Marcy here on individual disability. What am I looking for? Does it matter by age? Does it matter by gender?
Absolutely.
Does it matter by income, blue collar, white collar? Talk a little bit about my blue collar people and people that are clients that really want to have some coverage on this. Talk a little bit about that. How do I design a contract for them?
Well, blue collar, gray collar, white collar, anybody that gets up and goes to work every day for a paycheck, and that's why, who wants to work, but that's why they pay us, right? Because we're going to work to earn a living. And blue collar, the definition of disability, your occupation, is probably the biggest driver of the premium. So all else being equal, a 45-year-old male that was a blue-collar laborer, for example, versus an architect, they would have probably a 20 or even 30% difference in premium. So age is a factor, occupation being the most important factor. What are your duties? Not just a president, but what are your duties that you do every day? And blue collar tends to be more expensive because they have a physical skill, and that may take them out of the workforce versus somebody that would be more of a analytical type individual.
I'm just curious, Marcy. Workman's comp, a lot of blue collar, a lot of companies have that. Why is that not enough for a blue collar?
Well, that's a good question. That's also on the job only. So, and that's an accident typically on the job. An illness or an off the job accident would not be covered under workman's comp.
So DI is really not just accident. You could become ill.
Right. Illness, accident, injury, on the job, off the job. And with the blue collar contracts, a lot of that will be offset against Social Security and workman's comp because you do have a better chance of collecting that versus your white collar set.
What I'm thinking as blue collar, staying on that for a little bit, is it all the way out to 65 or most of them a limited term?
On the blue collar, it's typically a 2 or 5 year benefit period because the thought is Social Security would kick in. If you're a blue collar and you're disabled beyond a 2 year period, it's a higher likelihood of collecting Social Security.
Okay, so what do I want to do? Well, I'm talking about blue collar right now. How do I design a typical 45, as you're 45, what do I want to see in that policy?
Well, a good definition of occupation, and that can be a modified own occ. You don't really need to protect your specialty, but a modified own occupation. Many would even have an any occupation rider, which would make it less expensive, and that simply means if there's any occupation they are able to do based on education, experience, or training, and that's a good acceptable definition. A partial or residual definition, and then as long of a term as the carrier will offer.
Usually 5 years.
Usually 5 years.
Okay, so
some will go out to 65.
So I'm packaging really a mid-range disability issue, 5 years out,
Right.
because you said Social Security would probably take over after that.
Right.
Okay, now when I'm thinking about that, is there, out of a percentage of the DI that's sold that you guys sell, and I mean you guys are into this day in and day out. This is all you do, right? I mean we're talking about sick people. All they do is do disability insurance. In your ratio, how much blue collar to how much white collar?
Well,
Just curious.
yeah, a higher percentage of white collar, because unfortunately, if it was free, everyone would take it, right? And there are budget concerns. So, a person making $25,000 with 3 kids and other expenses unfortunately don't see the need for that. Although there are inexpensive worksite products that are available for that marketplace. So in the individual marketplace, long term, I'd say probably 75% is more in the white collar professional.
Interesting to note that the Obamacare exchanges now are thinking about offering on the side, I can hardly believe this, life insurance and disability insurance as an exchange issue. That's wild. I've been writing and blogging on that. I just thought I'd bring that up. Now, before we close out this segment, white collar, have you noticed any more, are we seeing more, because there's more females in the workplace. I mean, they're more than half the entire workplace. Are they buying DI at the blue collar level?
Absolutely. Well, not the blue collar level as much, I'd say. And again, a lot of companies will provide some type of inexpensive, limited benefit type policy for the blue collar. But the female marketplace moving into the white collar market, very much so.
Well, we're talking about blue collar, designing a blue collar DI policy. When we come back, we're going to talk about white collar. We're talking about own Ock, my favorite part of this whole idea, because I want to know specifically, and women now are buying DI more than ever. They own half the income. We'll be right back after the break as we continue to design and model disability policies, part of our disability insurance series with Marcy Pruitt. And don't forget to enroll at IULUniversity.com for the best training, education, and sales support when it comes to life insurance for retirement.
You're listening to the insurance industry's #1 resource for products, planning ideas, carrier information, and interviews you can use. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.
Did you know the average 401k runs out of money just 7 to 8 years into retirement? Time Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and many other publications have warned of the difficulty of saving with a 401k. But what if there was a way to create tax-free lifetime retirement income with no stock market risk? Good news, there is.
Living in fear of the next market dive is not the way I want to live my life.
Why would I go out there and take on risk when I don't need to?
I have a lot less stress knowing I can't lose any more of my retirement savings in the stock market.
Call now to receive your free, no-obligation analysis of what this retirement vehicle could do for you, a comparison to your current retirement plan, and a free video that explains this exciting opportunity. Start planning a retirement you can enjoy instead of worrying about future tax increases and stock market losses. Creating income that will last your entire life is the most important thing you'll ever do. Take control of your future. Call now for your free analysis, comparison, and video.
Well, welcome back to the Business Insurance Zone. I'm Steve Savant with Marcy Pruitt. And remember, you can order today's materials at thebiz.tv. And while you're out there, click on the Backup Technician icon right on the Biz blog for your 30-day free trial, where you can access the needs analysis and sales support material for financial planning. I've been using it for 22 years and using it for this show. And before moving forward with any of the ideas on this show, always consult your tax advisor or your broker-dealer compliance officer. We're talking about we're talking about designing disability insurance, part of our disability insurance series. We talked about blue collar.
Right.
Now we're talking about white collar, but more specifically, let's get our own Ock discussion on, because to me, this is really kind of cool for specific people like physicians and maybe some attorneys, or maybe Steve Savant and his ability to speak versus just write. Own Ock.
That's always a question. That's the first question for the definition of disability, because the core contract is your ability to perform the important duties of your occupation. And there's really 4 levels of own Ock. So we can
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, knock them out with the lowest tier in any occupation, which we've talked about, where any occupation you're reasonably suited by education, experience, or training, the carrier will require you to perform those duties or seek employment. That's typically in group LTD contracts and in blue collar contracts. The next level up is a ends not gainfully employed caveat. So you're unable to perform the important duties of your occupation, ends not gainfully employed. The difference there is it's your election to seek gainful employment. The carrier won't require you do so. So, you know, that's a great definition for
So if you're
for the
stir
masses.
crazy at home and you want to go work some other place, you might be able to do this.
It's your election to do
Okay.
so, and your benefit could then offset.
Okay.
The next hybrid, newer definition is a transitional ONOC, where you're unable to perform the important duties of your occupation, and you can double dip, so to speak. You're protected if you seek to go elsewhere and collect a paycheck as well as your disability. You can double dip until you reach 100% of your prior earnings. Then it becomes an offset, and that's a great middle road. If you're, you know, again, you're not forced to seek employment, you can go out and work, and until, you know, good for you, you're making 100% of what you used to make, you can go off claim, or the benefit would offset.
But you could, if I'm hearing you say, and I don't want everybody to go out there and seek the double dip scenario. I could just see wheels turning in agents' head, right?
Right.
But you could, if you had transitional ONOC, right? If I'm hearing you correctly, you could get, you're still receiving your DI payment stuff, but you could do something else that wasn't specific to that.
Right, right.
Wow.
And then the Cadillac is own occupation. The important duties of your occupation you're unable to perform, you're covered. So in that scenario, there's not a 100% cap. You can go out and do a different occupation and collect 100% of your benefit and make $1 million in something else. But this is the reality. Less than 2% of the claims are own occupation claims, because you either go back to what you know how to do, or you go back to, or you go back in a part-time capacity to your occupation or a new occupation, and that's going to be a residual.
Okay, well, I'm thinking of a physician that I know personally, and that physician is a very high-end surgeon.
Right.
Now, he could do a general practice if he hurt his hands in you know, God forbid, in an automobile accident. He hurt his hands and he couldn't do surgery anymore. Now, he's still going to be able to diagnose, he's still going to be able to do general practice, he's still going to do all these things, but he can't do surgery ever again, and that was his call to fame.
Right, and that is your own occupation, and as a, you know, he could be a hospitalist. We see that a lot, or consultant. So if you go into if the definition would protect you in your specialty. So if you could not perform that particular type of surgery even, then you would be considered disabled, and you can go out and make, or, you know, living in another area.
Is it hard? I'm just thinking, my mind just saying, is it hard to get these carriers to say, you know, say, okay, I'm specifically talking about that, and that is going to be a price tag issue.
Right.
So is it hard to get ONOC? Like, I'm thinking, when does it break down? The one I gave you is the easy one. Surgery, that sounds pretty straight up. How about a trial lawyer who's completely dependent on his ability to stand in front of a jury and actually communicate, and if he lost his power of speech or cognitive rational reasoning, could that be a problem?
Absolutely, and Standard actually is one of the few carriers, one of the only couple that will offer a specialty letter for an attorney. Now, many carriers have ONOC, but to actually have a letter of specialty with the contract, they're very few and far between. But for physicians and attorneys, they're probably the most common. Now, any other type executive or other applicants can purchase it, but is it really needed?
So you really have to have something really specific that is so germane to your actual employment. I'm thinking of Steve Savant. You know, if I can't come on the show, would that be specific? Because people like me, I'm not a physician, I'm not an attorney.
Right.
Could I actually get something that would quarantine me to that specific issue? I cannot do shows anymore.
Yes, and in your contract, I mean, that what are your duties, and then where does your income derive from? So if your income is derived from doing shows and being on air, then that would be your occupation.
Now, when you're looking at ONOC and professional, do you have any, and I don't want to get too much into this because we're doing marketing at the end of the week, but from a marketing point of view, who are you looking for ONOC? If you like what we're talking about, give me a couple before we leave the show today.
I like Standard, MetLife, Principal. They do a very good job with definitions of own occupation.
So those 3 carriers, and by the way, none of which are paying for this show. So if you're watching this show from any of those 3 carriers and you want us to do a little cha-ching with you, please feel free. I don't mind being mercenary. That's what we do on the business insurance. So,
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, remember, you can watch all our shows this whole week on DI. Just go out to our website, thebiz.tv, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Google+. Well, that's the Buzz on the Biz for today. You've been in the zone, the business insurance zone.
You're listening to the insurance industry's #1 resource for products, planning ideas, carrier information, and interviews you can use. When it comes to life insurance, annuities, long-term care, disability, or group pension plans, we're the news you can use.